I've got the great privilege of introducing Paolo Samichelli, who's an Italian entrepreneur. He's got about 30 years of experience. I was looking through your book a bit earlier and saw that not only you're an international speaker, and we've seen a number of posts of conferences that you're joining soon. But I saw in the book here that you're also a TEDx speaker, should I say. So the book that I'm holding up at the moment is your first book, so Scrum for Hardware. It's pretty much the first significant publication on hardware delivery using Scrum. But since then, you've evolved that and created a couple of other books. One, Scrum for Hardware Explained, which goes a lot more in depth. Scrum in AI, so looking at agile. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Scrum in AI is artificial intelligence, agile development using Scrum and machine learning ops. And that has also had a foreword written by Jeff Sutherland, who's the co-author of Scrum and the Agile Manifesto. So today you're essentially operating as a registered Scrum trainer and coach for Agile education with Scrum Inc., part of the family, and also help organizations discover better ways of delighting their customers. You're also involved in lean agile procurement, which is a really interesting aspect to add into this when it comes to hardware delivery as well, and potentially the first line of, or not the first line, but one of the first lines of impediment as you're trying to source materials for hardware delivery. You're a management 3.0 trainer as well. You've got an executive certificate in management and leadership from Sloan School of Business at MIT. And we're really lucky to have you in this time zone with us. So we really appreciate the time you're taking to come and have a conversation with us around the Scrum for Hardware in a scaled environment, which is particularly interesting to this group here. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much. And we'll take questions in the chat as we're going along. And what we'll do is at the end of your talk is we'll go through the questions. We'll have some Q&A time at the end. So over to you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. So I hope you can see my screen now. All right. So Jason properly introduced me already, so I'm not going to comment more on myself. Let's talk about the things you want to hear from me here. So my books, so the Scrum and AI that happened mostly during the pandemic, and my books about hardware. So if you want to buy one of the two books, you will get the other one for free. So if you have the first book, you can download again the online version on Linkpub, so that you get in the last page a code to download the new one, and vice versa. If you buy the new one, you get the old one for free. If you ask me in which order should I read it, I think you should start from my last one. And then with the first one, you have more understanding on also an historical perspective, why things happen that way. But the last one is basically a user journey of somebody that starts from scratch and wants to apply hardware apply Scrum in a hardware environment. And so what is hardware from my perspective? Because these words have different meanings. So for the sake of the book, hardware is a tangible product, something that you can see and touch, that might contain some software, because software is everywhere. So is not that there isn't software. There is. Most of the time there is software. But there is also electronics, so that the software can run. There is mechanical parts, meaning atoms together to serve a purpose. There might be plastics or composite material, still atoms, but together to serve a different purpose that might be aesthetical concerns or protection. So a different life cycle to compare to mechanical parts. So that's why we differentiate the protection and aesthetics from the mechanical parts. There might be an engine, there might be wheels and move like a car or a vehicle of any kind, or there might be even wings and fly like an airplane. How can you ideate, design, build, and mass produce a product like that with Scrum? So the concept is not like a designing. That's actually is the easier part, because until you move, you don't move atoms, everything it's simpler. How can you do the entire life cycle using the Scrum framework and achieve industrial agility? So before entering into the details, let's get a leadership perspective on why we might want to talk about agility in an environment so different from the origins, like industrial manufacturing. So in industrial manufacturing, the first significant publication in industrial manufacturing about organization is from Frederick Taylor, 1915. And Frederick Taylor, who wrote the scientific management, basically defined what management is, and is considered the first management consultant of the history. In the recent book, Organized for Complexity, from Niels Fleging, there is an interesting concept that I think introduced properly the why we want agility in manufacturing. It's called the Taylor's bathtub. So the difference in leadership from the pre-industrial organization, called also the micro market, the industrial revolutions, called also the mass market, and today's market, called also the creative economy, goes through this kind of shape that looks like a bathtub. So what I will be talking about? Before Taylor, in the companies before the first industrial revolution, they were basically composed of a founder. Most of the time, this founder wasn't just an industrial person, was more like an artist or a craftsman, or maybe just a little bit of everything. And the companies basically were extension of the founder. So there was the founder that had a vision, and people that were enlarging the founder capabilities, because alone you can really achieve a little bit. So there wasn't a separation between people who thinks and people who do. In Taylorism, instead, we have the definition of management. So the idea is, we have the industrial revolution. Of course, they weren't aware that was a revolution, but basically they have a workforce coming from the countryside with a very low skill, or almost zero scholarship. And so they needed to have people who studied and management to decide what to do and tell everybody exactly what to do. If you have very low skill workers, I don't think it would be realistic to talk about a self-organizing team, right? You need to, people are expected to being told what to do. So this is the separation of thinkers and doers that Taylor is introduced. And don't take me wrong, in that moment was really an improvement, because it was creating the profession, the profession of management, and started saying something like, okay, you have to train your people. You have to specify what to do so that people can follow the instruction and know what to do. Before it was more like, let's improvise. It was like the processes and the knowledge of the company was transmitted orally talking. And so Taylor really made an improvement in organizational design. The problem is that in recent times, starting from 70s, we have that people between the manager and the engineers doing actually the real work, there isn't a big difference in scholarship and skills. And of course, if you talk about very complex products, you might end up having the engineers working on the different aspects, having a higher degree of education than the coordinators, the management. So there isn't really the separation between thinkers and doers anymore. Also because if you want to attract smart engineers, they don't like to be told what to do. And that's also a famous quote from Steve Jobs saying, we hire smart people to know what to do, not to tell them what to do. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to hire smart people if you want to tell them what to do. But of course, how to design organization with this paradigm change, because you can't fall back in the old approach of the craftsmanship economy. You got to find something new. Also because we are talking about now the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution from the World Economic Forum is defined as, is not the big fish who eats the small fish anymore, it's the fast fish eating the slow fish. So time to market is really what people care about today. So how to respond to the fourth industrial revolution? In one word, teamwork. So research shows that collaborative problem solving leads to better outcomes. And so teamwork produce better results in problem solving. And also, working a team encourages personal growth, increase job satisfaction, and reduces stress. And we talk a lot about talent retention today. And finally, people are more likely to take a calculated risk that lead to innovation if they have the support of a team behind them. So teamwork looks like the needed ingredient for the new recipe of the new century. And so why Scrum? Because Scrum is a very effective framework to introduce the teamwork approach in any domain. So let's see how to start the first Scrum team. This company is called the Sysma. They are based in Italy, in the Veneto area. So if you are familiar with Venice, that is the region we are talking about. This case study has been presented on 2019. Together with me, there was the CEO of the company presenting this data. So what they do in industrial machinery, so machinery for jewelry. So this is called the micro machinery. So basically, they produce like this tiny microscopic gold chain or working on gold, normal precious metal, gold, silver, whatever. So basically, this is a very precision machinery. And they have laser machinery of any kind, so marking, welding, and so on, cutting, and so on. They are using it with powerful lens to cut a strong material like steel and iron, and with more a precise approach for dental and medical. And then they have 3D printers, so metal 3D printers and also resin 3D printers. So they can also print prostheses like teeth and pieces of bones and something like that. So you understand that the range of possible clients is very, very large, and possible usage as well, and also certification and the requirements and safety. So there is a very diverse number of markets to serve. Where we started from the top, we trained the management, the top management, the CEO and the first line have been trained in Scrum and Scrum Scale. And then we performed an event that you will see also later at team level called the liftoff. Lift Off is a book from Diana Larsen, and so it's what you want to do when you start a new team and a new project or a new product is the lift off. The metaphor is the rockets. So when the rockets take off. Just after agreeing with all the top management about the goal and the expectation of this transformation, what we've done is a value stream mapping. So these techniques comes from Lean. From concept to cash, you map all the possible activities that you have to perform to deliver value. In Lean, we do this to spot the bottlenecks and improve. In Scrum, instead, we do this to understand the needed skills. And then in Scrum, what we do, we build a cross-functional team so that all the skills from concept to cash are represented within the team. So in this way, you don't need to spot on paper the bottleneck. You just put the bottleneck within a team, provide a feedback loop with the sprint reviews and retrospectives, and you ask the team, okay, just fix the bottlenecks because they are within your process, internal process. And you can change the internal process. So having empowered the teams, you get improvement actually without even analyzing the process originally. So this is in practice the value stream we've done in just one morning. So 4 hours, I had 25 people from different parts of the company. And with this workshop, we designed the flow. We grouped the activities. And then for each activities, we mapped the skills, the blue sticky notes. And then we clustered the activities in professional profiles. This is really important in manufacturing. In manufacturing, traditional organization, we talk about roles. Roles means that is something that this is telling people what to do. Your role is this, so you expected to take care of these responsibilities. We stress instead the concept of professional profile, because the professional profile is not telling you what to do, is telling other people what you are able to do, what you can do, your skills. Okay, so a senior person is expected to possess multiple professional profiles. The most common mistake I see is mapping directly the cross-functionality with the roles. You have to map the cross-functionality not with the role, but with the competencies. And normally the traditional inquiry about skills does not contain the use of information to form a Scrum team. So what I'm done is clustering these professional profiles, trying to get the smaller number as we can, we end up having 19 profiles. And with these 19 profiles, I prefer this self-assessment web form. I just use the Google form, and we sent out to everybody, including blue collars in R&D department, everybody. And so for each professional profile, we said, how would you rate yourself in these professional profiles containing these skills, with all the skills we listed? And people are asked to rate themselves between 3 levels. We don't need more, even though the HR would push for having more levels. 3 levels. Beginner, I can work, but I need supervision. I need a mentor. Senior, I can work and I don't need anybody supervising me because I'm autonomous. Master, I can teach to beginners, nothing else. So with this data, you can build the skill matrix card. So each card represents one person. And we can play speculative organizational design. So we can do the Fanta game, you know, I don't know in Australia, but here at least in Italy, but I'm aware about Europe in general. There is this Fanta game that we do with football. So my friends built these virtual football teams, and every Sunday they look at the scores, and so they have they play against each other virtually. So in this way, you can play with a virtual organization and see, okay, let's pretend that we maintain the same number of staff of people employed. How many teams can we build? Do we lack some skills? Because for every virtual team, what you can produce is a team skill heat map. So adding all the skills within a team, you see this graph where if you have a very deep curve here, you know that this is high skill. When you have a hole, like a here or a here, this means that this is a lack of skills. And when you have a shallow, it means that you have beginners only. The masters are here in the back. So making this graph, you can even make it more colorful to present to somebody. You see your weaknesses, because lack of knowledge is also affecting the resilience of the company. If you have something that only one person can do, you might end up in trouble. And so in this way, even before starting, you already have very useful information on how strong and how resilient is your organization from the skill point of view. And so the idea is first you think big and then you start small. So that's approach. Think big, think about the big picture, and then you start the only one team. And so we decide to start one team. First problem, Scrum team uses much more space than traditional teams. So we needed to redesign the office space to have a space for the boards, for the sprint reviews, and so on. And then we come to the problem of this meetup. When you have hardware, the number of professional profiles is so high that you might end up having more than 10 people. And we know by experience that the Scrum Guide is telling us that more than 10 people in a team tend to be not productive, and there is a difficult communication. So in many cases, when you're starting in manufacturing, you will end up having a scaled environment from day zero. So how can you scale up with hardware? This company is called Net Engineering, is an engineering for transportation company. So basically they design and build roads, road streets, tunnels, bridges, railroads, high-speed railroads, train station, okay, everything that is in mobility, tram lines, and so on. And it's actually the biggest engineering studio in Italy, and they work across all the European Union and also abroad. So some of my teams worked in operas in Turkey, like in Africa, and so on. So this is a very complex product, a lot of skills, a lot of projects, and a very long lead time, because a high-speed train road might take years from the first concept up to the realization, even 10 years. So how to do Scrum a sprint of 2 weeks when you have 10 years lead time for the entire offer? You need something that is contained in this book. So basically the Scrum Guide contains the basic recipe to do Scrum. When you want to get serious, in this book, there is a very large collection of patterns, and I see Jason looking for that book. Here you go. So if the Scrum Guide contains between 20 and 30 patterns, depending on the point of views, the Scrum book contains 136 patterns. So this gives you more fluency to solve the problems you get. So what is a pattern? Is an elegant solution to a recurring problem in a particular context. And an organizational pattern is an organizational solution to a recurring problem. Let's get to our problem of scaling teams. So if you have decently sized product and you can put together 10 people, good. Okay, so you stay with that. If you don't need to scale, don't scale. What happens if the product is too big for a single group of people of less than 10 components? You can actually build a team of teams. So what is a team of teams? If a team is a set of individuals working together and helping each other to achieve the common goal, the team goal, the team of teams is a set of teams working together and helping each other to achieve the team of teams goal. So the pattern you want to look at is called the Scrum of Scrum. That is the definition of team of teams in Scrum. And so basically we use Scrum not for the team members, but for the teams that compose the team of teams. So what this does mean? In Scrum, we have refinement where the developers with the product owner clarify what to do and makes items ready so that they can work on it. If you have a team of teams, you need a scaled version. This is called the meta Scrum. The meta Scrum is the refinement of the refinements. It's where the key stakeholders gather with the product owners for every team and probably the chief product owner, that is the product owner for the team of teams, and with the representative of developers of every team together, they get a high-level prioritization. In other terms, a kind of portfolio, even though the approach we have is more similar to the refinement rather than the traditional portfolio. And that's what I've done at day zero. And for them, it was really an exercise that already produced a lot of value because nobody had a clear picture of what we are going to do in the current year. So they try to not only talk about the things that we are going to start, the project we are going to start in the next 3 months, but looking a little bit longer, they started mitigating the dependencies and the impediments proactively. Of course, if you note the date in the bottom of the picture, what happened shortly after 25th February 2020 in Italy, the first Western country to got COVID. We got lockdown, right? So immediately we switched to Trello, and that was the only thing was available in that from night to morning. But then they managed to do that. Even with a free tool, they managed to have the entire portfolio and started assigning the projects to product owners, meaning teams, with a time scale of 1 year. And so this was very useful in that environment because in construction, when you can't do something, what you do, you outsource. So having the portfolio, everybody looking at it, transparency, was raising some ideas, something like maybe we can offload this part here to that vendor, and we can manage it to prioritize that and so on. Okay. And this is Meta Scrum. Of course, the Scrum Master cycle, they have the daily scaled Scrum. And so basically they have the daily meeting just after the team meeting to raise impediment at the inter-team collaboration. And the scaled retrospective, just after the team retrospective, every team send a representative to have a retrospective every sprint. So it's not mandatory in Scrum scale, but they do it at sprint cadence, also the scaled event. And they started with 11 teams at the beginning. And we had the typical Scrum at scale design. So management team, rather small, 4 people. They were serving both as a Meta Scrum team and also as a HIT executive action team. The only difference was no, all the members were both. So basically, for them, it wasn't two teams; it was just two events. And the Scrum Master, Nicoletta, she was part of the executive action team. So the escalation was like like this, because she was attending the daily, and after they had a management daily Scrum, and so she could raise the impediments in minutes. So basically, in this way, managing a portfolio of dozens of projects with a very long time to market with more than 100 people was like a piece of breeze. And they started then scaling it. So this is only the Italian part of the company. They have 10 offices in Germany, in Bulgaria, and so on. So they started scaling the other branches of the company in this way. A few more patterns to understand how to work in Scrum in this way. Of course, Scrum, the basic Scrum, the Scrum guide, the Scrum, consider that you can plan at the sprint planning everything for 2 weeks or 1 week, but in reality, you might have something that cannot be planned, like an interruption, field request, defects, and so on. So how to do that? In the Scrum book, you have this pattern. Basically, you do the sprint planning, leaving an empty space called the buffer that you put a sticky notes in your sprint backlog, and you also give an estimate to the buffer. The team start working normally. Then if an interruption comes, the product owner is prioritizing. The product owner can say, no, we are not going to work on this because it's not our problem. So they can say no, or we can say, okay, we will work on this, but next sprint. And so putting it in a product backlog, or let's do it now because it's urgent and is a legitimate interruption. And so they put in the buffer. The first available developers can take care of that, make it done. So in this way, you have a better SLA, service level agreement, rather than next sprint. But on the other hand, there is not an interruption. So it's still a pull process. And so you will find all the details here sorry, this is what happens if you overflow the buffer. So you have two patterns here, the interruption pattern, and if you overflow the pattern, the buffer, you go on the emergency procedure. If you have this pattern and then you have a team of teams, what this means, that teams can work together and help each other. So you get an interruption, the product owner say, okay, we can do that. Then another interruption for the same product owner, or we have the full buffer. What can we do? Shall we start the emergency procedure? Well, somebody can help. And so offloading something from the first team, the first team can take care of the interruption. So this is a way to managing multiple teams in a team of teams in industrial, because you will have unplannable work in a hardware. There is no, it's very unrealistic thinking that the teams are only building new stuff and they don't need to maintain the old stuff. Then, of course, when you have a very diverse team, let's pretend you are an orange person in this team, and you have a problem about orange topics. How can you solve this problem if the other people, nobody knows about orange stuff? So you need something that is called the community of practice. In this case, we call it discipline, and community of practices. The difference, the discipline is like the skill, and is led by a champion, and the community practice is more a general topic, so the line is not straight, it goes through different colors. So something like, I don't know, safety. Okay, everybody cares about safety. So this is in the Scrum scale is a pattern called the bird of a feather, and in the Spotify model is the guilds, and something like that. So you will find different names, but basically is a lateral team collaboration, cross-team collaboration is called in the Scrum scale design. And then, okay, if you can do it by yourself, you are great. You can live happily, but most probably you will need a lot of vendors. So Jason before mentioned the lean agile procurement. We will see something also about that. So this is another company. In this concept, in this company, we are building a house automation platform from very simple to smart device connected in the cloud and mobile. How we started? Again, we started with the lift off. Here we have the picture of the book, the Diana Larsen approach. So 2 days joint meeting to discuss the purpose, why we do this project in the first place, alignment, what are the rules that we want to embody on our team of teams. So also the definition of done, the definition of ready, and so on. And then building the new product backlog. We used the user story mapping approach from Jeff Patton book. So here we have a very complex scaled design and also quite strange because the standard Scrum scale is symmetrical, but in reality you might get some asymmetrical designing. So we have internal teams building. So basically the house automation is platforms is composed by sort of a brain, let's call it like this. So a central unit controlling all the devices and all the remote accesses. And so we had this in the headquarters of the company, we had 3 teams co-located in the same room, working as a team of teams. And then we had vendors. The vendors were developing significant parts of the platform. So it wasn't just like providing material. It was they were developing significant and complex parts. So how can you coordinate these complex design? Basically, we changed the contract with the vendor. We said, okay, you are incentivized to deliver as early as possible and continuously. Every time you deliver something, you will get a senior technical person providing you a feedback. Everything that we provided a feedback, a positive feedback at the end of the month, we pay. So we shortened the payment cycle to make an incentive to the vendor to get an agile behavior. So we didn't tell them do Scrum because vendors say, okay, I will provide what you ask, then I'm gonna work how I prefer. But we asked, do it continuously and incrementally, and you will get a reward for doing that. The senior technical person prioritizing the list of deliverables for the vendors, for their point of view, they were product owner, but for us, they weren't like coordinators. They were developers in charge of integrating the flow of increments from the external vendors into the main platform continuously with their team members. So the idea is that some teams like team 3, they had a very powerful developers that once in every few days, they were showing their peers, okay, we got this new increment. So for the Scrum perspective, it wasn't really, oh, there is something from outside. There is one developer producing something, a lot of stuff that needed to be integrated and tested with the rest of the platform. For this regard, we wanted to have a one sprint review, only one. We don't care who developed what. We want to see only the entire platform working. One sprint review, one increment. And in this way, there was only one real product owner. There was the chief product owner, because the chief product owner was prioritizing the business perspective. The external backlogs, they were prioritized by technical dependencies, basically. And this was the impediment flow. And the meta Scrum is that it was only one meeting with the representative from vendors and from the co-located teams and the remote internal teams. So we also, this company have 3 sites. So we had also teams in the company side, but remote. And this was before COVID. So we were even quite familiar with all this kind of remote working. And to achieve industrial agility, vendors and consultants must play with a team attitude. How to do that? Lean Agile procurement contracts. It's a very useful tool to design a contract with a win-win, lose-lose game. So if you have a traditional contract, you have a win-lose dynamics, meaning that if the vendor overcharge and under-deliver, the vendor wins and the buyer loses. Instead, if the vendor undercharge because the negotiation is very tough and over-deliver, the buyer wins and the vendor loses. Instead, we don't want winners and losers in this game. We want or we win together or we lose together. You need to change the contract. There is no different way. If the rules of the games are there are winners and losers within the team of teams, you will not get a team. You get a team only if we win together or we lose together. And this needs to be extended to the ecosystem of your partners. And then if you have a win-win, lose-lose rules, then you can scale. So you can have daily Scrum and scale daily Scrum also with your vendors. You can have a co-located collaborative sprint planning in a scaled way. So we use this pattern, and of course, in Italy, we always use food as a metaphor. And so behave like you are in a buffet. You can't take too much food because you have to eat it. But also you can't take just one piece because otherwise you have to queue again. So just try to pull from the table the food that you can eat. And then, so in 1 hour, we had this coordinated chaos where all the teams were pulling work, discussing each other, who should do that, and so on. And after 1 hour, we called for a break. Every team was showing what they got in their hands in terms of stripes. Every stripe is a product backlog item. And then we do some adjustments and then they do the sprint planning too, deciding how to do stuff. So in 1 hour, the largest number of teams we had was 6. In 1 hour we had the 6 teams doing the sprint planning one, deciding what to do. Only one review, so we had to steal a room. Again, the space is very important to have the sprint reviews and also to integrate the product during the sprint. And then production. How can we go in production? This is an oil and gas company. They are very serious about lean, and now they start to do Scrum to be also effective, not only efficient. So in industrialization, traditionally is considered a phase. From the modern point of view, the industrialization is a product. So we have the machine and the machine that beats the machine. Same story. So we started with a cross-functional team and we needed the space. But this is a production team. So production team, we were actually in the floor, where the shop floor where the things are built and produced. And in this place, the team could ideate, prototype, and build and test. So they use this approach called the Lean 3P. So basically, they started the assembly line of this product first with cardboard, with boxes. And with Post-its, they design the flow. They collect feedback from the operators, from the management, about, for example, the sizing of the line and so on. Then they build the prototype with wood, with this chassis. And so they collect, again, feedback about ergonomic space and so on. Then aluminum, this part already works, but is not at the expected throughput. Then the prototypes, and they keep iterating until they have the production they want. Of course, it's not only cardboard and wood. They are a serious company, so they also have this high technology, 3D printing, and so on. And they use this diagram, that is the fishbone diagram from Lean, to visualize how is assembled the product. And since we have two teams in parallel, one building the machine, the other building the machine that builds the machine, we need to synchronize the two teams. So in green, we had the things, stable things from the other team, and in red, the things that we know that we don't know. So interface is not stable yet, so that we can use design pattern to mitigate the risk of change. And then, of course, the sprint review. Okay, we are almost at the end. What we learned. The fourth industrial revolution is pressuring companies to change the paradigm of leadership, and an increasing number of companies using teamwork as an antidote to these challenges. And with Scrum, you get a very simple and unique tool to launch and operate a network of teams with the minimum viable bureaucracy. But this is how companies are already working today. What about the future? My friend Joe Justice says, I think we should rephrase the Agile Manifesto with individuals and robot interaction over processes and tools. So the near future for some companies, even the present, is a hybrid team composed of humans, natural intelligence, and artificial intelligence working together to achieve the common goal. So if you're interested also in this topic, you can get the other book. And these are all my links. I think I'm quite on time. Maybe a couple of minutes less would have been better. But anyway, do we have questions?
Perfectly timed. Feel free to raise your questions now if you haven't popped them in the chat. You can just call them out. I can kick us off though, just while people are formulating their thoughts. I love the buffet planning. That was really good. And the machine building machine, I think, is very beneficial. I've heard of the mule assembly line being created to be able to establish how you want to set up your factory area. So it was really good to see that in action there. Just going back to the start, was there much hesitation to get collaboration or buy-in from leaders and managers when it came to doing training with them?
It's a very clever question because the management, from Taylorism perspective, management, they don't need to be trained. They are managed because they know the stuff, right?
Yeah,
so the traditional approach is that we know the stuff. Why will you want to train me? You need to train the workforce. The topic here is that you want agility, we are going to redesign the company. So it's not about the process. There is, for example, some consultancy firms are lately used that is a way of saying, they call it the agile way of working or agile wow way of working. And I hate that word. I always contest that word. It's not a way of working. It's a way you redesign the organization. Then, of course, this is influence the way of working. But if you present agile as a way of working, means that, okay, the operative people needs to change their way of working. If doesn't work, it's their fault. Instead, if you propose this and say, okay, I'm going to redesign the organization, it means that we are changing the roles, changing departments, changing the leadership positions, then you get their attention. Because then the management say, oh, okay. Also because one frequent problem you get, if you design the organization from the value stream point of view, and the organization starts from the functional point of view, you might end up having less value streams than functions, what means you have less top managers. So I found that if you don't redesign the company, maintaining the same numbers of top seats, You don't do that. They will send you away if with some excuse before you can actually do, because of course the top management they don't want to lose their seats. So putting the topic in a way that is really raising the importance of this, then the management wants to understand more before doing this. So okay, first you explain us what you are suggesting to do, then we elaborate these, and then and so with these. Normally, it's not a training of 2 days. Normally, it's a set of meetings of 2 or 3 hours because management are busy.
Yep.
And also, at some point, they will realize that they are busy because their organizational design is ineffective. And it's not because they are managers.
Yes.
Very functional organizational designs make management to be available and have a spare time for unexpected things. Instead, dysfunctional organizational designs produce overloaded managers. But yeah, that's a matter of topics and wording.
But I guess by taking that approach of breaking down into smaller modules of benefit, you're really holding up the mirror to the organizational design, or they're coming to the conclusion that it is inefficient and could be a lot better if we took a slightly different approach, which is really clever. Yeah.
It's very important to maintain the status quo. So if there is, because the problem is that with top management, you need to align the personal agenda with the company agenda. And in Scrum scale, we have the mega issues, right? And so the resistance to refactoring the organization actually needs that you need to find a design that is maintaining. It's not even, some people call it politics, but I think it's reasonable. I mean, you don't want to tell people, okay, you're going to lose your jobs safety and careers just because we want to change the organization because somebody from outside told us this. The idea is that we need to design an organization that is better for organization, better for the people. Now, if you are in an industrial environment, I never found a company overstaffed. Normally they are understaffed, so it's possible. If you go on public sector, maybe you will find some company overstaffed, and so that might be harder depending on the environment where you are. Then you might have unions and so on. So, as I said, if this is a competitive advantage, cannot be easy, cheap, and fast. It needs to be hard, expensive, and slow, right? If it's a competitive advantage, it means that your competitors cannot do it overnight. Everything that can be easily copied is not a competitive advantage. So agility is a competitive advantage, and so it's hard. Otherwise, you couldn't. Otherwise, it's magic, right? Something that it's easy and it's also a competitive advantage. It's unrealistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody?
Hi, Paolo. Hi, Jason. Vikram
Vikram.
here.
Hello.
Yeah, Paolo, thank you so much. Amazing talk. Scrum at scale, seeing it happening in this environment, it's really good to, look at the perspective from other side of the world, right? But Paula, I'm just, maybe curious, like if you had thought of any other framework than Scrum at scale, what thought process might have gone into your planning, or how did you decide to come up with, scaling Scrum is going to help us rather than probably trying maybe safe, right? Or scaling Kanban or something like that. So just want to understand, what thought process went behind it.
Yeah. So the difference, and I talk only about Scrum and Scale, not only because I teach it. Of course, I teach it, but I attended trainings about safe. Attended trainings about as a student. I mean, about less larger scale
Yeah.
Scrum. And So the difference, and also I rely a lot on the patterns book rather than just the Scrum Scale framework. The difference is
Okay.
this. Many scaling frameworks, they are pictures on how you want to design your organization. So there are models, patterns,
Okay.
on how to design them. And they say if
Yeah.
it's a very complex and rich recipe with a lot of ingredients.
Yeah.
And some detractors says that there are too many ingredients there because every year they add up stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
That's true.
concept here is that it's not a picture, it's a movie. So the Scrum
Okay.
scale, actually, you don't want to mirror the simple design of the
Right.
scaling frame. You want to start a process by which
Yeah.
you design a team of managers in charge of improving the organization, and
Right.
you start a sprint of organizational design that never ends. So in
Uh,
practice, when you have a real transformation, you want to have
yeah.
a team of management that transform the organization.
Yeah.
Then they needs to know any kind of examples in the literature to have ideas on how to do that.
Yeah.
But then you want to design your own organization starting from the value stream perspective. So
Yeah.
the way I do that, it's more an framework-less approach because Scrum
Okay.
is not a design, is a process. So
Yeah.
and basically Scrum. So Scrum Scale is Scrum.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
Scrum
Yep.
to design Scrum?
Yeah.
I do not suggest to start from a design of a framework like Less or Safe or Nexus, because
Understood.
in industrial, the dependencies are very different. So there is this
Yes.
concept called the Conway's law that the
Right.
product reflected the organization of the design of the product reflected the design of the organization. Elon Musk is very vocal about this. He says that product mistakes reflect organizational mistakes. So the
Right.
idea,
Yep. Yep.
you started from the value stream because you start from the product and then you design
Yeah.
the organization to reflect the desired product architecture.
Mm.
And that is a very innovative and complex product concept because normally the
Yeah.
design comes from or consultancy or HR, and they know nothing about the product. The idea is
Understood. Yeah.
design organization to reflect the desired architecture of the product, and the desired architecture of the product needs to reflect the desired business goals, future business goals of the product. So
Right.
we want to have a modularity. So we want to decouple the team of teams between each other, reflecting the decoupling of the modules on the product. So it's a
Okay.
very, thank you for the question. It's a very
Yeah.
deep
Yeah.
thought. And so that's
Yeah.
why it's not that Safe cannot work. Not even the standard design or Scrum scale can work because there needs to
Right.
be asymmetrical and
Right.
reflecting the product. So it's a bottom-up process, not top-down.
Understood. And thank you, Paolo. I mean, it encapsulates, how the importance of product development in an organization because it does reflect uh, what the organization is actually doing. So yeah, thank you so much, Paolo.
You're welcome. Also, in hardware, it's easier because you can see the
Uh,
product. In
yeah.
software, the product is invisible.
uh,
So you are
very
tempted to
true.
to
Very
design the
true. Very true.
organization because you don't see the product, right? The software architecture is always.
Immediately. Very true. Very true. Yeah.
Great question.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
question.
Yeah. I wondered as we were going through as well, and perhaps maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap up. But with the cross-functional teams in industrial land or the industrial world, because of that specialization, because of resource specialization, I wondered what your experience was in terms of the stickiness of resources to a Scrum team, whether they maintain that stickiness or they come and go, depending on what it is that they're currently doing in the sprint pattern.
You touched a very important topic, a very important topic. Thank you. So the concept of roles and the specialization only in one field is very strong in the industrial manufacturing,
Yeah.
and some people are even refusing this. So it's a matter of first understanding that it's a journey for everybody. So also being a little bit indulgent with people learning new stuff. The other thing that is that we need to work with HR, because if you want to have a teamwork, but then you have individual evaluation and individual goals, also about the incentives, right? If you have individual incentives and you want to foster teamwork, this will not work. So we need to have team incentives. For example, there is a very interesting video that in some way reminds the agility, and it's very enlightening. I think is the higher how we work video on YouTube. So Hire is a Japanese giant. They have appliances from white to brown, so everything you have in your house, in your kitchen, and so on. So fridges, dishwashing machine, and so on, washing machine, and so on. And I think it's one of the biggest, if not the bigger, at the moment. And they are organized in what they call it micro enterprises, and basically are teams, less than 10 people. So again, they are not mentioning anything about agility and Scrum, but many of the ingredients of this design reminds the roots of Scrum.
Yeah.
And what they do is these micro enterprises, they swarm to form this temporary value stream around the business cases. They do use a more lean startup approach, so they try to do something and see if this works. If this swarm of micro enterprises produce earnings, then the companies, the micro enterprises, they share the revenues, and they also free to decide how to share it. So they do their own revenue share scheme. If not, they dissolve and form a new value stream aggregation. So from outside, it looks like a very scary model, and I don't know how, because every time there is a case study, it's always in between what people do and what people would like to do. And but this is another concept, very interesting, because when you have this entrepreneurial approach, so this is a new word that actually the MIT is very vocal about this intrapreneurship, meaning you have to behave like an entrepreneur, but intra company, not using your own money, but using company money. So this entrepreneurship approach then raise the question and say, okay, what should we study to produce more value? So if you have an incentive that is both intrinsic and extrinsic, so intrinsic come from outside, means that you get some value revenue share if you succeed. Intrinsic, because then you are like owning and nurturing your product, because it's something that comes from your team. So you also develop a proudness and attachment to what you build. Then you overcome the concept of I do only this role, I expert on this in this expertise. In fact, if you say, okay, if you want an increase of salary, you have to learn something outside your field of expertise, you will get that. So it takes time. It's not happening over time, but it's a matter of changing stuff one after the other and then seeing people behave. Of course, some people prefer to work in a Tayloristic or Henry Ford approach, like the assembly line, very single and simple steps. So I only do that, and I do that continuously.
Yeah.
And but the smart people, the senior people, normally they likes to understand the big picture.
Mm.
So I recommend on YouTube another video from Elon Musk that is on the everyday astronaut. Maybe I can show this video right now since I have the sharing. Let me find it on youtube.com every everyday astronaut. There is a very interesting video, very long actually video with Elon Musk showing, here we go, Starbase. So, sorry, now there is the usual. Let me mute this. Also, let's remove this from. I don't want to make an advertisement on video. So, as soon
We
as we
can
get
we
it.
can share those links in afterwards to the
Yeah.
guys that have joined as well. Yeah.
So, in this video, Elon Musk is talking a lot about how they are organized and also this other one video. So let me share the link here on the chat for the people attending live, and then we can share it on the. So this is a very long video, and the other very interesting video is here, this other one, conversation with Elon Musk. And so here, Elon Musk is very, very, very direct and vocal about the concept that the organization is reflecting the architecture of the product, and this is very and higher how we organize something like that. Let me see if I found it. Um, here you go. How it works. Mm, okay, this video here also is quite interesting.
Awesome.
So in basically in organizational design, if you want to change the culture, you need to change the structure.
Mm.
And but of course, we go back to the first question: is this kind of radical changes require leadership? And so, if you start talking about this stuff, all they don't do it. A lot of companies they say, "Oh no, this is too much for us. We can
Mm.
we can't change the company like this," and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it cannot be for everybody.
Mm.
If this uh, easy and something that you can buy, and it's not going to be a competitive advantage because your competitor will buy it anyway.
Yeah.
That's why I'm also quite skeptical about the scaling framework. The concept is that the scaling framework, the scaled design, the design of the scaled company must come from inside and through experience. It's an empirical process. In that way, you get a competitive company, and in this way, you get all the company different.
Mm. Mm.
If you rely on some sample picture, then you get all the companies the same. And how can this be a competitive advantage? I don't know. I don't really know.
Yeah. That's a great response, actually. That yeah, if that's the approach, then you're going to get the same result. Whereas if you're empirically evolving your process and implementing improvements a bit at a time, and you're measuring your results, you're going to get something that's actually quite bespoke and unique to solve your own problems, which I think goes to answer Vikram's question as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, are there any other questions? And if not, we can head towards close. Calling in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
All right. Just wanted to say thank you once again for spending this morning with us, your morning with us. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure that everyone's taken a lot from this. And it's certainly it's great to have some validation along the way of things that have been working and things that people can try that can help in their environment. So thank you once again, Paulo,
Thank you.
and thank you for everybody who joined. I wish you a good
Yeah.
night and a good morning.
Good morning, night, or whatever it's gonna be, depending on the part of the world where you are connecting from.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And thank you, Jason, for making it happen. So
Awesome. No problem at
yeah.
all. It's a blessing and a love of mine. So it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, and have a great night, everyone.
Bye. Good night. Good day.